How is it going to impact the rest of the wide receiver room? What are we going to get out of Oklahoma's wide receivers going into 2024? We're going to discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we talked about Jayden Gibson's injury. We talked about what it potentially could mean for him. What does it mean for the Oklahoma Sooners wide receiver room? It's a stacked and talented group from top to bottom. You want Jayden Gibson to be a part of that because it just makes you more dynamic. But let's start here. Dion Burks is a difference maker. No matter where you get him the ball on the field, he's going to be a difference maker for you in the passing game.
Yeah, and it's funny because Bruce Feldman drops his list every year, the Freaks list, which is one of my favorite lists to go through because then it gives you an idea of guys to really keep your eyes on, around the nation. I remember last year was the Michigan defensive lineman. His dad played in the NFL. Always, it slips my mind at this point because now he's gone from college. But he would do like the lift where he would stand up with the weight over his hand. He had like 100-pound weight, and he would just lay from the ground and stand all the way up. It's just ridiculous freaks out there. Dion Burks has landed on this list, and so he's someone that now everybody's going to be paying attention to, right? Like, granted, we knew that he was going to be one of those players that everybody's going to have to watch because he's not only very, very dynamic, very shifty in his route running and very good at route running, but he always finds a way of getting open. And now adding him to this freaks list, getting a little check mark to his name on something else accolades to keep track of. There's a good chance, man, that him and the Jackson Arnold connection is going to be absurd. Now, we're seeing it now in practice, right? We know for the most part, the defense knows what's going to come down the line. But at the same time, if a dude's just that good, how do you stop him, right? So I think he's going to be probably the number one dude to lean on. And then from there, you've got a plethora of additional players to look at with the unfortunate piece with Jayden Gibson gone.
Yeah, here's what Bruce Feldman of The Athletic had to say in his article about the freaks of college football. He said, Burks proved to be their strongest wideout in the squat at 540 pounds, the bench press at 400 pounds, and the power clean at 340 pounds. He also topped all receivers in jump height, measured in force plates based off his velocity at takeoff. Burks' propulsive force was remarkable in terms of his ability to generate forces of nearly 4 times his body weight in a vertical jump. Okay, there's so much to unpack there, but 400 pounds in the bench from a wide receiver who's 5'11", 5'10" ish. We're being generous with the ish. That's incredible. Like, that is incredible power, strength, explosiveness. I mean, maybe the most explosive receiver we've had since Marquise Hollywood Brown.
That's what it feels like, right? He stands out, right? There was a video that showed him coming back to campus, right when they were getting ready for fall camp. He was already in the weight room hitting them weights. Like, he wasn't wasting his time at all. And hearing that he's pressing over 400 pounds at his frame tells you that his goal is to be as healthy as possible, right? He's taking care of his body and building up enough muscle to make sure that when he's taking those hits, potentially over the middle or even deep when they're trying to contest him, he's making sure that his body's going to be durable enough to be able to handle it. And so I guess from there, the next question is who's the wide receivers to step up? We're still waiting on Andrell Anthony as well as Jalil Farouk to be at least 90%, right? Venables mentioned he anticipates that to be there for the first game of the season around that area. So they may play, they may not. But with Nic and Burks, who's now going to be that number 3 receiver that we need to keep our eye out for?
I mean, my guess right now is going to be Jalil Farouk is going to be the guy that starts for Oklahoma that week 1 game against Temple. But I think with him and Andrell Anthony, you're going to see kind of a short leash in non-conference. Just let them get out there, get their feet wet, get 10, 15 snaps. At what point we see Andrel Anthony, I'm not exactly sure, but I do believe we see Jalil Farouk in week 1. But beyond him, okay, you're looking at a Jaquays Petaway. Is this Brennan Thompson's opportunity, to take a step? We've been hearing, some really good things from a number of wide receivers on the depth chart. A guy like a JJ Hester, who transferred in a couple off seasons ago. Maybe now everything's going to come together for him and he's going to have a breakout campaign. So it's a really, really intriguing group to watch, because you've got your number 1 and number 2 in Burks and Nic Anderson. And then that number 3 spot right now is going to be a little bit up for grabs over the next few weeks of fall camp, because Jayden Gibson was pretty much slotted into that spot as Farouk and Andrel Anthony recover from injury. Now the door is kind of open for a guy like JJ Hester or a Brennan Thompson to put together a fall camp that earns them some significant playing time.
Yeah. JJ Hester has been a name that's been coming up a little bit as of late because of just how good of a camp he's having. And one thing with him, right, he transferred in from Missouri. He's a Tulsa boy. And health-wise, he just hadn't been as healthy to be able to play. And at his size, he's 6'4", and, at his peak, when healthy, he runs a 4.4 40. So that gets you another guy that you get him up the sidelines, he's gone, right? And he's a big frame dude. So like I said, at 6'4", that's something that you want, right? And he's over 200 pounds. So nice big receiver that runs a 4.4. Sign me up. I'd love to see him. Brennan Thompson is looking to be healthy this year as well. You get him out there on the outside, he's going to burn some folks on that post route. So you can add him. And as you mentioned, Jaquays Petaway. But now you can kind of, pivot over to some of the young players, right? The Zion Kearneys of the world, the Ivan Carry-Ons, right? And honestly, I think the one out of the freshman group that may make that type of a jump probably is going to be Carry-On, right? It feels like the way that we've been recruiting size like crazy. We're going for dudes over 6'1" on a regular basis, but especially for the outsides. And then for that slot, we're looking at dudes in the 5'9", 5'8", 5'10" range, because we want those super fast, shifty guys that's hard to catch. I can see Carry-On getting some extra snaps because we knew that he was physically imposing, and he stood out a little bit at the spring game in spring practice. This may be an opportunity for him to go do some stuff too.
Yeah, there are a number of guys that Emmett Jones has to work with. And that's a little bit of the beauty of the depth that he's created. Often you look at what he's done since he's arrived in January of 2023, and you think, man, how can they hold on to all these guys? Well, he's got them believing in the process and trusting the developmental plan for each of them. And so you make a great point about a guy like JJ Hester, who just hasn't been healthy. You can't develop if you're not healthy. You can't get on the practice field. You can't work in team drills if you're not healthy. And so the fact that he's starting to shine a little bit just goes to show, don't always give up on a dude after one season. Don't give up on a guy after 2 seasons. Sometimes the developmental plan and process for everybody is just a little bit different. And maybe now is the time for a guy like JJ Hester, who again has all the talent in the world to be a significant impact player. It wouldn't surprise me to see a true freshman factor in, especially in non-conference play, as you're again trying to get guys like Farouk and Andrel Anthony. You're trying to get them some work, but again, not overextending them so that you can have them for non-con. But I think this also, if we're talking long-term for the entire season, this just looks like a Jalil Farouk back at starting wide receiver, one more year. And again, we can go to the fumbles and you can talk about them. They matter. That ball security matters. But let's also talk about a dude who is one of Oklahoma's longest tenured players. Mm-hmm. He was one of the guys that stuck around after Lincoln Riley left, even though his good buddy Caleb Williams left. Jalil Farouk stayed. Program guy who's now going to get an opportunity to go out on a high note in his senior season.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I don't see Farouk playing in the first game, maybe even 2. It just feels like you want to be cautious with the health of these wide receivers until you get closer to like Tennessee, right? Mm-hmm. But you're still going to need them to play because you got to get them in that game shape. So I'm wondering what our first lineup's going to look like, because it's not going to be. I don't think that game 1, 2, and 3 is really going to be a full reflection of what Tennessee's going to see. I think they're going to really mix it up. So, but you make a good point. Jalil Farouk is probably the perfect dude, to start because of him being a veteran presence. Latrell running a similar offense as Levy is going to make it a lot easier to transition for Jackson Arnold. But having a guy like Farouk, who is a possession guy, but at the same time can run up the sidelines if needed, may take some weight off his shoulders. So I'm gonna keep an eye open on that one. I don't know about Temple. I do see Houston in front of him or whatnot, but Temple feels like just a little too fast. But we'll see.
Well, yeah, it's all that matters is making sure him or Angelo Anthony don't suffer any setbacks. And again, hoping for the best on whatever comes from the MRI that Jayden Gibson will probably undergo on Thursday to reveal whatever went down and whatever happened. But wide receiver is going to be a position to watch all season long. We'll have you covered here on Locked On Sooners. Coming up,